This is the homework helper for adding and subtracting integers 7th grade. So at the top of the screen, as you can see, is what we saw in class today. That's a reminder of how we deal with the second number in the problem. That is what's key here. The first number is simply an indicator of where we start on the number line, but the second number is really going to tell me how I'm then going to move on the number line and where I'm going to go for my final answer. So let's start off with the adding questions, because as you hopefully remember, the adding questions don't really require us to do anything special. We just have to figure out what direction we're going to move after we start with that initial number. Now, the number line you see on the screen is not quite full, but it is enough to help us figure out where we need to go on the number line to figure out what type of answer we should have here. So when we have 6 plus negative 7, notice that this question is plus a negative. Well, plus and negative questions make me move to the left on the number line. So I'm going to start at 6, and then because I have to move to the left, I'm going to move 7 to the left, since this second number here is a 7. So when I count off and move 7 jumps to the left, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, I end up at negative 1, which indeed means 6 plus negative 7 has to be negative 1. In the second question, it says negative 13 plus 4. So I would start out here, what would be negative 13, and then since the second number is positive, it's plus a positive, but when I add a positive number, that forces me to move to the right on the number line. So I'm going to start at negative 13 and move 4 jumps back in, and as you can see, when I do that, I end up at negative 9. In this final question, I've got negative 7 plus negative 7. Now, some people would be so inclined to say, well, that's 0 right away. And no, that wouldn't actually be correct. First number here is negative 7, so I'm going to start at negative 7 on the number line. And then since I'm adding a negative, well, adding a negative forces me to move to the left on the number line. So if I start at negative 7 and make 7 jumps to the left on the number line, I end up at negative 14. So negative 7 plus negative 7 has to be negative 14. Now, as far as subtracting goes, here's 3 questions from the subtracting side of the worksheet. Remember, what we do with subtraction is we change subtraction into adding the opposite, because those are quintessentially the same. So I'm just going to start off and I'm going to rewrite all of these. Again, I'm going to change them all into plus, or addition problems. And then whatever's right after it changes its sign. So if it's a positive, it becomes negative. If it's a negative, it becomes positive. So 11 in this first question was positive, now it's negative. 16 in this question was negative, now it's positive. And 6 in this question was negative, now it's positive. And now I can jump right into the same rules that I was just using for addition, because they're all now addition problems. So I've got 2 plus negative 11. Well, if I'm adding a negative forces me to move to the left on the number line. So I'm going to start at 2, and then I'm going to make 11 jumps to the left on the number line. As I count off 11 jumps, I end up at negative 9. So 2 plus negative 11 is negative 9. Now in the second one, now I have negative 9 plus 16. Well, 16 there is positive, so I'm adding a positive. Well, when I talk about adding a positive, that makes me move to the right on the number line. So my first number here is negative 9, and then I'm going to make 16 jumps to the right on the number line. And as I count off my 16 jumps, I see that I end up here at what is 7. And finally, the last question, although it looked kind of hairy to begin with, actually turns out to be just what ends up being a basic addition problem. 2 plus 6 changes into 8.